Hello, gentle viewers. This is a personal message to one of my favorite channels to which I'm subscribed, Esoterica, hosted by Dr. Justin Sledge. I'd highly recommend you check it out. He is a well-spoken and diligent scholar of some very arcane subjects. Even though he's an academic and I'm an anti-academic, our channels are both about arcane philosophy. His is about mysticism and the occult. Mine is for anarchists and moral antagonists. My living space is like the introduction to Masterpiece Theater, full of art, literature, music, and the natural world, all eclectic things. Intelligent criticism is considered a sign of respect between academics, which is actually one of their weaknesses. If you call yourself an academic in every video, my first thought was, are you going to make the occult sit behind desks in alphabetical order? How else would you meet the definition of or like an academy? Academics and the occult have opposing agendas and values, or perhaps they have some of the same agendas and values. On that note, what if academics studied itself? How long would it take the simulation to break the fourth wall and start devouring itself like the eternal serpent? I'll call this the academic paradox. And why is it necessary to post a video? You never know how you're going to attract someone's attention. You might meet a content creator who you're a fan of, and it turns out they're a fan of yours. So Dr. Sledge has a video entitled, Who is Yahweh? How a warrior storm god became the god of the Israelites and world monotheism. He's not saying a Canaanite god similar to Thor literally became God. It's hard to know what he's saying. Just as if I was a Catholic scholar wearing the uniform I earned, and I said I check my faith at the door, it confuses people. The phrase, check it at the door, is a euphemism that means you're checking your coat, or yarmulke, or collar, and like those things, your beliefs are something you're still wearing, which makes it a very troubling statement. You don't present a subject respectfully by glossing over something that is itself a valid discussion. Either your readers can see that you love facts, or you're a glosser. Mr. Wizard or Mr. Rogers would never try to get away with that. They have the answers. If you're a professional writer, it makes no difference what your reasons are. The viewer only knows what you tell them. If you have to go back and explain yourself, just don't say it. I understand the great convenience it must be to separate yourself from the thing you're studying, in which case it's impossible for the scriptures to reach out from the page and affect you, which means there can't be any truth in them. But fortunately, we don't live in that world. The fourth wall does break. It's a lot more interesting, and it can be studied. And then Dr. Sledge says, one God has proven successful, not that this makes him a better God or even a real God. What is your definition of a real God? You're the one who said it, and you didn't have to say it, so now you have to go swimming. What is it that makes a true God different from a false God? It's in the Old Testament where a prophet douses his altar with water and it still lights, resulting in people choosing a verifiable God over idolatry, the beginnings of empirical wisdom. Really, the entire scriptures are the story of one God distinguishing himself and a chosen people. A real God doesn't have to prove anything if your definition is the same as mine. So my second question to Dr. Sledge is, in the Old Testament, do gods actually do anything? When someone asks me a question I'm an expert in, I have to tell them there are different schools of thought. If you're honest, you have no choice. I'm going to demonstrate for my viewers how to deal with experts who only promote their own brand, because they're likely to encounter this on a regular basis. Modern archaeology began with some gentlemen whose goal was to prove the scriptures, and then it moved away from that until it was considered an opponent of religion and even of history, a designation that is not necessary. An objective person knows that excluding faith as a source of information can be just as wrong as excluding empirical science. You don't have to wait for trends and discoveries to reveal a great many scholars aren't just wrong, their motivations were foolish. When you remove faith from a handbook for living, what's left over is a nonsensical series of coincidences. The Egyptian point of view on Scripture is not good. We reward an extinct culture for leaving elaborate funerary monuments. So my next question for Dr. Sledge is, do you think the Scriptures have a literary existence only? Is that all there is? What's overlooked is that the Bible isn't just literature, but a tool, a living document. You're studying something that affects you. Let's say my friend who is very skeptical thinks the Bible is a work of mythology, because how could someone rise from the dead? Well, everyone has heard of St. Thomas. When Jesus returned and some of his disciples saw him, Thomas was like, "That's crazy. I'll believe it when I see it." So, which part of the story is mythology? Does my friend say, "I don't believe that he didn't believe something until he saw it. I'd have to see that he didn't believe until he saw..." That's the St. Thomas paradox. Is a skeptic so skeptical he doubts that a skeptic doubted? Dr. Sledge says, when we allow our faith to dictate our history, we've betrayed both. I'm talking about doing justice to the subject you're covering for intellectual achievement and integrity. So what happens when you've betrayed just one of those? The God of the Israelites establishes or reestablishes himself multiple times, saying to Moses, "I am that I am. My existence is my identity." And yet you say the origins of Yahweh are utterly unknown. They're not utterly unknown. Therefore, it's wrong to sideline faith with the presumption that someone's beliefs are automatically unscientific, when there's no such distinction in the human brain. How is a theologian supposed to interpose facts if his entire belief is branded as inadmissible? Dr. Irving Finkel, in his lectures on ancient Babylon, makes no distinction, which appeals to both sides. I'm going to close with a classic argument from the Lincoln-Douglas format of debating. Lincoln-Douglas debates are based on logic, ethics, and philosophy. So what if a high school debate was over the existence of God? One side says, ethics violations in the name of a greater being are hypocrisy, to which the other side needs to say, hypocrisy is a human condition. You've ignored the possibility that God allows it. As an Easter egg, I have a question for Dr. Sledge I'd like to submit as a subscriber. I have heard a rumor that author J.K. Rowling studied witchcraft in preparation for her Harry Potter books, and that the spells in her books are actual spells. Is this true? The movies are pretty bad. I'm fairly sure the spells are just plot devices. Thanks for watching.